One night, one stage, one disaster so catastrophic it killed a supergroup before the world even knew it existed. Picture this. It's 1983. You've got Ozzy Osbourne, fresh off biting a bat's head off, already a walking tabloid headline. You've got Ted Nugent, guitar-shredding madman who hunts bears for breakfast. You've got Tommy Aldridge on drums, the guy who made double bass pedals sound like machine guns. And Rudy Sarzo on bass, straight out of Quiet Riot's Peak. On paper, this should have been the biggest thing in rock. A supergroup that could have rivaled Led Zeppelin, stadium tours, platinum albums, the whole 9 yards. Instead, they played one show. One single show. And it went so disastrously wrong that they never spoke of it again. What happened on that stage wasn't just a bad performance, it was a meltdown, a train wreck in slow motion. The kind of chaos that makes you wonder how 4 professionals, guys who'd played Madison Square Garden, guys who'd headlined festivals, could screw up this badly. The audience didn't know whether to laugh, cringe, or leave. Band members were glaring at each other mid-song. Equipment failures, timing disasters. And Ozzy? Let's just say he wasn't exactly present. By the time the final note hit, the dream was dead. No second chance. No, we'll fix it next time. The supergroup that was supposed to dominate the 80s evaporated like smoke. Music journalists who were there that night, they don't talk about it. Bootleg recordings mysteriously vanished. The band members themselves have stayed suspiciously quiet for 40 years. But the story leaked, piece by piece, rumor by rumor, and what really went down that night is somehow worse than anyone imagined. This isn't about a band having an off night. This is about egos colliding, substances flowing, and rock and roll eating itself alive. This is about what happens when you put 4 massive personalities in one room and assume talent alone will save you. It won't. This is the story of the supergroup that imploded in 90 minutes. Simple. Take the best musicians from different famous bands, throw them together, let them create something new. In theory, you get the ultimate dream team, like putting Michael Jordan, LeBron, and Kobe on the same court. In rock, it's happened before. Cream, Blind Faith, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Velvet Revolver. When it works, you get legendary albums and sold-out world tours. When it doesn't, you get forgotten footnotes and awkward silences. This lineup, on paper, it was nuclear Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness himself. Just launched his solo career after getting fired from Black Sabbath. His first 2 albums, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, went multi-platinum. The guy was a certified rock star lunatic with a voice that could fill arenas and a stage presence that terrified parents worldwide. Ted Nugent, the Motor City Madman. A guitar virtuoso who shredded like his life depended on it. Hits like Cat, Scratch Fever, and Stranglehold made him a household name. Known for wild stage antics, bows and arrows, and playing so loud your ears would ring for days. Tommy Aldridge. One of the most respected drummers in hard rock. The guy played with Black Oak, Arkansas, Pat Travers, Whitesnake. His double bass. Work was legendary. Fast, precise, punishing. If you needed someone to anchor a supergroup, you picked Tommy, Rudy Sarzo, bass player extraordinaire. Fresh off playing with Quiet Riot during their biggest moment, Metal Health hit #1. On the Billboard charts, Rudy had groove, technical chops, and serious stage presence. Put these 4 together and what do you get? A band that should have dominated the decade, a group that could have headlined every major festival, a lineup so stacked that record labels would have thrown blank checks at them. Fans were salivating. This wasn't some gimmick. These were proven hitmakers, guys with #1 albums, guys who knew how to work a crowd, guys who lived and breathed rock and roll. Expectations weren't just high, they were through the roof. This was supposed to be the supergroup of the 80s, the one that would make everyone forget about Led Zeppelin. Breaking up. The one that would prove rock wasn't dead, instead it became a punchline, because when these 4 finally took the stage together, everything that could go wrong did. The chemistry wasn't there. The egos clashed. The performance fell apart. And by the end of the night, the supergroup was over before it even began. One show, one disaster. One legendary implosion. Let's talk about Ozzy. By 1983, Ozzy Osbourne wasn't just famous, he was infamous. A walking disaster wrapped in leather and chaos. The guy who bit the head off a bat on stage. The guy who pissed on the Alamo while wearing his wife's dress. The guy who got kicked out of Black Sabbath for being too out of control, which is saying something. But here's the thing. Ozzy was also a massive commercial success. After Sabbath booted him, everyone assumed his career was done, washed up, finished. Instead, he teamed up with guitarist Randy Rhoads and dropped 2 albums that went platinum. Blizzard of Oz, Diary of a Madman, hit after hit, Crazy Train. Mr. Crowley, Flying High Again. Ozzy proved he didn't need Sabbath. He was bigger without them. But then tragedy struck. Randy Rhoads died in a plane crash in 1982. Ozzy was devastated, lost. The guy who wrote his best riffs, who gave his solo career legitimacy, gone. So by 1983, Ozzy was in a weird place. Still famous, still selling records, but also grieving, drinking heavily, and spiraling. He needed something to shake things up, a new direction, a fresh start, enter the supergroup idea. But here was the problem. Ozzy didn't fit. Ted Nugent was sober, disciplined, a control freak who ran tight ships. The guy hunted animals for sport and practiced guitar 8 hours a day. He didn't tolerate sloppiness or chaos. Ozzy? Ozzy was chaos. Tommy Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo were professionals. They showed up on time, they rehearsed, they took the craft seriously. These weren't party animals, they were musicians who wanted to work. Ozzy showed up when he felt like it, and when he did show up, he was usually drunk, high, or both. It wasn't that Ozzy lacked talent. His voice was iconic. His stage presence was unmatched. But he operated on Ozzy time. He thrived in controlled chaos, surrounded by people who could manage him, guide him, keep him functional. This supergroup had no structure, no manager babysitting him, no Randy Rhoads keeping things musical. Just 4 egos thrown together assuming chemistry would magically happen. It didn't. Ted wanted to run things his way. Ozzy wanted to do whatever Ozzy felt like doing. Tommy and Rudy were caught in the middle, trying to keep the peace while wondering what the hell they'd signed up for. On paper, it made sense. 4 legends, massive potential, instant credibility. In reality, it was oil and water. Ted was the straight-edge drill sergeant. Ozzy was the unpredictable wild card. And when you mix discipline with chaos, you don't get balance. You get a bomb, waiting to explode. And explode it did, on stage, in front of a live audience, with no second chances. This wasn't just a bad fit. This was a disaster waiting to happen. The cracks started showing immediately. Before they even played a single note in public, people close to the band knew something was off. This wasn't the excited energy of a supergroup coming together. This was tension. Awkwardness. 4 massive personalities realizing they'd made a terrible mistake. Rehearsals were a nightmare. Ted Nugent showed up with plans, set lists, arrangements. He wanted to run things like a military operation. Tight, polished, professional. He'd pick songs, chart them out, and expect everyone to fall in line. Ozzy showed up late. Sometimes he didn't show up at all. When he did appear, he'd stumble in with a drink in hand, mumble through a few songs, then disappear. Ted would be fuming. Tommy and Rudy would exchange glances, wondering if this thing was even going to happen. Ted wanted perfection. Ozzy wanted to wing it, and neither was willing to budge. Then there were the creative clashes. Ted wanted to play his songs, his hits. Cat Scratch Fever. Stranglehold. Songs where he was the star, the centerpiece, the guy, shredding for 10 minutes while everyone else backed him up. Ozzy wanted to play his songs. Crazy Train. Flying High Again. Songs where he was front and center, commanding the stage, owning the spotlight. Neither wanted to compromise. Neither wanted to play second fiddle. And when you've got two frontmen fighting for control, there's no middle ground, just ego. Tommy Aldridge tried to keep things diplomatic. He'd suggest neutral territory, covers, jams, something fresh that wasn't tied to anyone's catalog. Maybe they could write new material together? That went nowhere. Fast. Ozzy wasn't interested in writing. Ted wasn't interested in sharing credit. The whole thing stalled before it even started. And the interviews? Painful. When journalists asked about the supergroup, the answers were telling. Ted would talk about discipline, professionalism, and his vision for the band. He'd barely mention Ozzy. Ozzy would crack jokes, deflect questions, and look uncomfortable. Like he knew this wasn't going to work but didn't want to say it out loud. Rudy and Tommy gave safe, generic answers. Yeah, it's exciting. We're working on some stuff. We'll see what happens. Translation: this is a train wreck, and we're just trying to survive it. Nobody sounded excited. Nobody sounded confident. It felt like four guys contractually obligated to pretend this was a good idea. The final rehearsal before the show was a disaster. Ozzy barely made it through 2 songs. He forgot lyrics, missed cues. At one point, he just stopped singing mid-verse and walked off stage. No explanation, just gone. Ted lost it, started yelling, threw his guitar pick across the room, told everyone this was unprofessional, embarrassing, a waste of time. Tommy and Rudy just sat there. What were they supposed to do? Pick sides? Walk out? They'd already committed. The show was booked. Tickets were sold. Press was lined up. Backing out now would torch their reputations, so they stayed. And hoped maybe, Ozzy would pull it together for the actual gig. He wouldn't. By the time show day arrived, everyone knew. This wasn't going to be great. It wasn't even going to be good. The question wasn't whether things would go wrong. The question was how badly fans packed the venue, expecting rock history. A legendary performance. 4 superstars delivering something unforgettable. They'd get unforgettable, all right, just not the way they hoped. And then came the gig. Thousands of people packed into the venue, screaming, chanting, ready to witness history. They didn't know what songs would get played. Didn't matter. This was the supergroup. Ozzy and Ted on the same stage. This was going to be legendary. The band walks out. Ted struts to center stage, guitar slung low, confident. Tommy sits behind his massive double bass kit, sticks ready. Rudy takes his position, calm and collected. Then Ozzy stumbles out. Not walks. Stumbles. Even from the back row, you could tell. Something was off. He grabbed the mic stand like he needed it for balance. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. The crowd didn't care. They roared anyway. The first song starts. Ted rips into an opening riff. Tommy and Rudy lock in tight. The rhythm section sounds massive, professional, powerful. Then Ozzy's supposed to come in. He doesn't. He misses his cue. Just stands there, swaying slightly, staring at the crowd like he's forgotten where he is. Ted shoots him a look, sharp, angry. Tommy keeps the beat going, hoping Ozzy will jump in. Finally, half a verse late, Ozzy starts singing, but he's not on the song. He's somewhere near it. Like he's singing a different version in his head and the band's playing another one entirely. The crowd shifts, confused. This doesn't sound right. Second song. Same problem. Ozzy misses another entrance. Ted visibly grimaces mid-solo, shaking his head. You can read his lips from the front row. Are you kidding me? Rudy and Tommy exchange glances, the kind of look that says we're screwed. But they're pros. They keep playing. Keep the groove alive. Hoping somehow this will turn around. Doesn't. By the third song, it's falling apart completely. Ozzy starts improvising. Not in a good way. In a what the hell is happening way. He's ad-libbing lyrics, forgetting words. At one point, he just hums through an entire verse because he can't remember what comes next. Ted stops playing mid-song. Just stops. Stands there, with his guitar staring at Ozzy like he's watching a car crash. The crowd notices. The energy drains out of the room. People aren't cheering anymore, they're watching in uncomfortable silence. This isn't a performance. It's a disaster unfolding in real time. Then the body language starts. Ted turns his back to the audience. Faces. His amp. Refuses to even look at Ozzy. Tommy's playing harder, faster, like he's trying to drown out the awkwardness with sheer volume. Rudy keeps his head down, focusing on his bass, pretending none of this is happening. And Ozzy? He's oblivious. Grinning at the crowd, waving, trying to engage like everything's fine. But it's not fine. You could see it. They weren't a band. They were strangers forced onto the same stage, counting down the minutes until this nightmare ended. A mic stand falls over. Ozzy doesn't pick it up. He just keeps singing into a mic that's lying on the stage floor, bent over like he's talking to the ground. Someone in the front row laughs. Nervous laughter. The kind that spreads. Ted finally snaps. Mid-song, he walks to the side of the stage, signals to the crew, the universal gesture for wrap this up. They cut the set list short. No encore, no grand finale, just an abrupt ending. The last song limps to a finish. Ted unplugs immediately, walks off stage without acknowledging the crowd. Tommy throws his sticks into the audience, not as a souvenir, but like he's getting rid of evidence. Rudy exits quickly, professionally, but you can see it in his face. Relief. Ozzy stays on stage, a few seconds longer, waving, blowing kisses, completely unaware that he just killed a supergroup in 90 minutes. The house lights come up, the crowd files out, confused, disappointed. That was it? That was the supergroup everyone hyped up? Backstage, nobody said a word. Ted left immediately. Tommy and Rudy packed up in silence. And Ozzy? He probably didn't even remember it the next day. One show, one meltdown, one ending before it ever really began. The second they walked off stage, the tension exploded. Ted Nugent didn't even make it to the dressing room before he started ripping into Ozzy. Witnesses say he was screaming, calling the performance a joke, an embarrassment, a waste of everyone's time. You showed up drunk. You forgot the lyrics. You made us all look like idiots. Ozzy, still out of it, just laughed it off. Cracked a joke. Told Ted to lighten up. Wrong move. Ted grabbed his guitar case and stormed out. Didn't say goodbye to anyone. Didn't look back. Just gone. Tommy Aldridge sat on a road case, head in his hands. He'd played with legends his entire career. Never experienced anything like this. He kept muttering to Rudy, "How did this happen? How did we let this happen?" Rudy stayed quiet, professional to the end, but you could see it in his eyes. He wanted out. Fast. And Ozzy? He wandered off to find more drinks, completely oblivious to the carnage he'd just caused. By morning it was over. No official announcement, no press release, no dramatic statement, just silence. Ted went back to his solo career and never mentioned the supergroup again. In interviews over the years, journalists would ask about it. He'd deflect, change the subject, give one-word answers. It didn't work out. That was it. No details, no stories, just a door slammed shut. Tommy Aldridge rejoined Whitesnake shortly after. When asked about the Ozzy-Ted project, he'd give the same diplomatic answer every time. We tried something. It wasn't the right fit. These things happen. Translation: it was a nightmare, and I'm never speaking about it again. Rudy Sarzo. Went back to Quiet Riot, then later joined Ozzy's solo band, ironically. But he learned his lesson. He never talked about that night. Not in interviews, not in his autobiography, not anywhere. It was like the gig never happened. The press tried to dig. Music journalists who were there that night wrote vague reviews, called it uneven, said the chemistry was still developing, polite ways of saying it was a train wreck, but none of them wanted to outright trash it. These were legends. You don't burn bridges with guys like Ozzy and Ted over one bad show, So the reviews were soft, forgiving, and quickly forgotten. Bootleg recordings from that night? They mysteriously disappeared. A few grainy clips surfaced online decades later, but most of the footage vanished. Some say Ted bought the tapes and destroyed them. Others think the venue killed the recordings to protect everyone involved. Either way, the evidence is gone. And the fans? They felt betrayed. This was supposed to be the event, the supergroup that would save rock. Instead, they got a sloppy, uncomfortable disaster that felt more like a bad jam session than a professional performance. Word spread fast. Don't waste your money if they tour. It was embarrassing. Ozzy ruined it. The damage was done. No record label wanted to touch them. No promoter wanted to book a second show. The supergroup that was supposed to dominate the 80s died before it ever got a name. That night didn't just hurt their reputation. It killed the supergroup. It proved that talent alone isn't enough, that throwing legends together doesn't guarantee magic. That chemistry, preparation, and professionalism mattered just as much as skill. Ted learned he couldn't control chaos. Ozzy learned he couldn't coast on reputation. Tommy and Rudy learned to vet projects before jumping in. And the music world learned a harsh lesson: supergroups are fragile. One bad night can destroy years of credibility. The dream died in 90 minutes, and nobody ever tried to revive it. So why did it fail so spectacularly? Because everything that could go wrong did go wrong. This wasn't just bad luck. This was a structural disaster from the start. First, clashing styles. Ted Nugent played aggressive, high-energy, guitar-driven rock. His music was about him. Long solos, technical precision. The guitar was the star, and everything else existed to support it. Ozzy's music was different. It was dark, heavy, atmospheric. The vocals were the centerpiece. Randy Rhoads' guitar work complemented Ozzy's voice. It didn't overpower it. The songs had space, dynamics, room to breathe. Put those two approaches together and what do you get? Chaos. Ted wanted to shred for 10 minutes. Ozzy wanted to sing hooks. Neither style left room for the other. And when you've got two people fighting for sonic dominance, the music suffers. Tommy and Rudy could have anchored it. They were versatile enough. But they needed direction, a clear vision, someone in charge telling them what kind of band this was supposed to be. They never got that. Second, different eras of rock. Ted was a 70s guy. His peak was the mid to late 70s arena rock. Guitar gods, the era when musicians showed off their chops and fans worshipped technical skill. Ozzy was an 80s guy, at least in his solo career. His sound was modern, polished, radio-friendly. Metal was evolving, getting faster, heavier, more theatrical. Those two eras didn't blend. They clashed. Ted's style felt dated next to Ozzy's, and Ozzy's style felt too polished next to Ted's raw energy. They were speaking different musical languages, and neither was willing to learn the other's. Third, leadership conflict. Every successful band has a leader, someone who makes final decisions, settles disputes, keeps things moving forward. This supergroup had two leaders, and both refused to back down. Ted thought he should run things. He had the experience, the discipline, the work ethic. In his mind, he was the adult in the room. Ozzy thought he should run things. He was the bigger name, the commercial success, the guy selling out arenas right now. Neither would defer to the other, so nothing got decided. Rehearsals dragged, arguments festered, and by the time they hit the stage, there was no cohesion, no unity, just four guys playing in the same room. Fourth, Ozzy's unpredictability. Let's be honest, Ozzy was a mess. Not because he lacked talent, but because he was battling demons. Grief over Randy Rhoads, alcohol, drugs, the pressure of maintaining his solo career while dealing with personal chaos. Ted couldn't work with that. He needed reliability, structure, someone who showed up sober and ready to work. Ozzy couldn't give him that, not in 1983, not in that headspace, and without someone managing Ozzy, like Sharon did with his solo career, he was a loose cannon. Unpredictable, unreliable. Talented, yes, but impossible to build a band around. Fifth, unrealistic expectations. Fans expected instant magic. The media hyped it as the next big thing. Record labels smelled money. But nobody asked the important question. Do these guys actually want to work together? They didn't. This wasn't a passion project. It was an idea someone pitched that sounded good on paper. Four legends. Big names. Easy money. But music doesn't work like that. Chemistry isn't automatic. Trust takes time. And when you skip all the foundational work and jump straight to the stage, You get exactly what happened: an awkward, uncomfortable disaster. Supergroups are hard. They require egos to check themselves, musicians to compromise, leaders to collaborate. This group had none of that. They had talent. They had name recognition. They had potential. But they didn't have what mattered most: the willingness to actually be a band. And without that, the whole thing was doomed from the start. One night proved it. So what happened after the implosion? Everyone scattered. Fast. And they all went in completely different directions. Ozzy kept being Ozzy. He went back to his solo career like nothing happened. Hired Jake E. Lee as his new guitarist. Dropped Bark at the Moon later in 1983. It went platinum. Hit singles, MTV rotation, massive tours. The Supergroup failure, barely a blip on his radar. Ozzy's had so many chaotic moments in his career that one bad gig didn't register. He forgot about it, moved on. Kept making money, kept filling stadiums. In interviews over the years, when journalists brought it up, Ozzy would shrug. Yeah, we tried something, didn't work out. That's it. No drama, no regret. Just Ozzy being Ozzy. He's never apologized, never acknowledged his role in the disaster. Probably doesn't even remember most of it. Ted Nugent went the opposite direction. He doubled down on his solo career. Stayed sober, stayed disciplined, kept touring relentlessly. But the Supergroup failure stung him, you could tell. In rare moments when he's been asked about it, his answers are clipped, cold. It didn't work. Move on. Ted's a guy who prides himself on professionalism, on being reliable, on delivering great shows every single night. That gig violated everything he stood for. So he erased it, pretended it never happened, and made damn sure he never worked with unpredictable people again. Tommy Aldridge became one of rock's most in-demand drummers. He joined Whitesnake, then later worked with Ted Nugent again, ironically. Then Thin Lizzy, then back to Whitesnake. His career thrived. He became known as the guy you call when you need a killer drummer who shows up prepared and drama-free. But he never talks about that Supergroup gig. When asked, he gives the same polite answer. Sometimes things don't click. He learned his lesson. Vet your projects. Make sure everyone's on the same page before you commit. Rudy Sarzo actually ended up playing with Ozzy. A few years later, he joined Ozzy's solo band and toured with him through the mid-80s. They made it work, because Sharon Osbourne was managing everything. She kept Ozzy functional, kept the band professional. With proper management, Ozzy was fine. Great even. That Supergroup failed because nobody was managing the chaos. Rudy saw that firsthand. When asked about the failed project, Rudy stays diplomatic. We gave it a shot. These things happen, you move on. But he's smart enough not to elaborate. Did they ever reconcile? Nope. Ted and Ozzy never worked together again, never spoke publicly about each other. No reunions, no nostalgic interviews, no remember when moments. It's like it never happened. The only evidence it existed, a few bootleg clips, some faded memories, and the occasional music nerd digging through obscure rock history. The Supergroup became a ghost story, a cautionary tale whispered among musicians, proof that talent isn't enough, that ego kills bands faster than anything else, and a reminder that some dreams are better left on paper. Here's the weird thing about failure. Sometimes it teaches you more than success ever could. That Supergroup, the one that imploded in 90 minutes, became a masterclass in what not to do. Musicians studied it. Managers learned from it. Future supergroups looked at that disaster and said, let's make sure that never happens to us. Velvet Revolver. They rehearsed for months before playing live. Made sure the chemistry was real. Made sure everyone was committed. Them Crooked Vultures. Dave Grohl, Josh Homme, and John Paul Jones spent years writing together before they even announced the band. No hype. No pressure. Just three guys making sure it actually worked. That Ozzy, Ted Trainwreck taught the industry a brutal lesson. Don't assume talent equals chemistry. You can throw legends together and still get garbage. You can have the best R.A. Summes in rock and still fail spectacularly. Because bands aren't built on skill alone. They're built on trust, collaboration, shared vision. And when you skip those steps, you get chaos. But here's the ironic part. That failed supergroup is more famous because it failed. Nobody remembers the bands that had decent runs and broke up quietly. Nobody talks about supergroups that released one mediocre album and faded into obscurity. But this disaster, people still talk about it, still search for bootlegs, still wonder what could have been. It became legendary because it was a train wreck. One night, one stage, one spectacular implosion, and somehow, that failure left a bigger mark than most successful bands ever will. In rock history, some legends are remembered for their greatness. Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, Queen, bands that changed music forever. But others, they're remembered for one unforgettable disaster. For the moment everything went wrong. For the night they proved that even legends can fail. For the performance so awkward, so uncomfortable, so catastrophically bad that it became part of rock folklore. This supergroup never made an album, never went on tour, never got a second chance. But they earned their place in history anyway, not for what they accomplished, but for what they destroyed. Sometimes the most powerful bands aren't the ones that last. They're the ones that explode. And this one, it detonated before it even began. One gig, one disaster, one story that refuses to die. That's rock and roll.